Good morning. For those of you who were not here yesterday morning, I'm Sandra HENRIQUEZ, the Executive Director of CALCASA. Welcome on day 2. And right now, I am so pleased to invite DELILAH Rumburg to the stage. We will be presenting to you information on a national partnership. We're so pleased and excited. DELILAH is the CEO of PCAR, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape, and the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. And so please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning. How's everybody doing? Again, I see what everybody keeps saying when you stand up here and look at the number of the awesome faces looking up at you. It's just great to see so many people here at the conference. Many of you know that last year the National Football League approached 3 entities, one being the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, CALCASA, and Prevent Connect, and the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence, to talk about hotline services. So what happened, the NSVRC did distribute $1 million to 49 states and 5 territories to support the state and local hotline activities. After that, we did a survey, and the field clearly indicated that priority should be focused on prevention. Hotlines are established, and what we really needed was more money and more activities for prevention. No disagreement here, right? So we approached the NFL and we said, we have a deal for you. We have a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach that will change our culture in 1 generation. And it starts now, and the clock begins now. We're going to change our culture in 1 generation. So we're pleased to announce that the NFL did forge a relationship with us for a multi-year, multi-million-dollar agreement to coordinate prevention activities, policy and messaging activities to create safer communities and prevent sexual violence. Yeah. We will be centralized, we will coordinate, and we will plan together. We have just leased space, subleased space from Jewish Women International in Washington, D.C., and we're near DuPont Circle. We are going to have a visible presence in D.C. like never before. I know many of you, that's right. We have not had a consistent, visible presence to fund the activities for the sexual assault movement in D.C. Again, the time is now. It's happening. So we're going to work together with you and our national partners to forward this movement to end sexual violence. So for 20 to 40 years, we have been advocating with you for the rights and needs of victims. And our priority has always been to continue to build capacity and to serve victims and survivors. So to continue doing that, the NFL has provided funding for grants that will create programs to identify promising practices, add to the body of practical research, and enable us to disseminate that information to the field. Additionally, I know you know how important it is that we collaborate and partner with our friends in the sex offender management and treatment field. And so we will do that and hopefully create and disseminate information on effective treatment strategies. We do believe prevention is possible, and we will be using the spectrum of prevention to support this comprehensive approach. Also, for the first time ever, we were going to have significant money to support our national policy initiatives and programs in Washington, D.C. That's big. We will be sharing space together, our 3 entities. But one of the things I want to talk about is specifically what the NSVRC role will be. Each of the three entities have a specific role and goals. Our activities will enable us to partner with communication experts and public health researchers like the Berkeley Media Studies Group and the Glover Park Group to tell our stories, to help people understand the complexities of sexual violence and how it is linked to other oppressions and why it is relevant to every individual. We will work with the media to inform the public, community leaders, policymakers to create investment in preventing sexual violence. We will hold systems accountable, and we will work to advance the dialogue for effective prevention strategies. Our primary goal is to align media messaging with prevention programs and policy goals. So, the NSVRC has just posted our first employment opportunity. So if you go to nsvrc.org, we would love to have you apply for that first position in Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Are we excited yet? So, Delilah talked about the partnership with the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence, CALCASA, through our Prevent Connect project, and the NSVRC. And I want to talk a little bit more about CALCASA and Prevent Connect's role on that and some of the other things that we would like to do. She talked about there would be a grant program, so we are going to make grants available in those 5 areas that she talked about. We're taking a 5-pronged approach, and that is services for victims, prevention, policy, working with those who have committed sexual offenses, and communications and messaging. And so that's the 5-pronged approach that we're taking in terms of creating culture change within that one generation. When we talk to the NFL and we see them as seed funders, because really what we want to do with this new entity that we're forming is streamline resources, find a place to gather non-governmental but private funds, corporate funds, so that we can make those available to the field. And we want to make it really simple for people to know where to go and where to do something and make a difference and make a contribution. So we want to do this. We want to make grants available for services. In terms of prevention, you know, our perspective is that obviously we need to start very young, right? And so with regards to the NFL, part of what we pose to them is that we need to start back in middle school with Pop Warner and Junior All-American efforts, because those then lead to high school, those then lead to college, and those then lead to the NFL and their fan base. Because we see them, and I think they really could identify that this is the pipeline to the NFL. So we need to fund the pipeline. We need to start back in middle school and be working on the prevention efforts and working on the systems change, the policy changes that will help us and help everybody to send the same messages about character and conduct and what it is and isn't acceptable. So that's the prevention piece. In terms of working with those who've committed sexual offenses, we need to be working hand in hand, because these individuals belong to our communities, they belong to our families, and that's where they go back, and that's where they get reintegrated. And so we need to not make them into pariahs, but to work with those that can be treated to prevent reoffense. And that is where we connect with those working in sex offender management, is that we connect around prevention, around the area of preventing reoffense. And then in terms of, Delilah talked about the communications and messaging, and actually I think now I'm going to ask Monika to come up and talk a little bit, Monika from the president of the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence, to wrap up and provide some information about our partnership and what's going to happen around in the policy arena. Thank you. Sorry. MONIKA Johnson, HOSTLER.
Thank you, Sandra. As Sandra stated, I'm MONIKA Johnson, HOSTLER, the president of the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence. And we've been using the term the spotlight is on sexual violence, but the spotlight really is on us up here as well. So I think it's both literally and figuratively a good moment in our time and in this space with many of you. I have to say I was very shocked at the number of you who raised your hand as first-time attendees. And so if nothing else, I hope you take away that you are experiencing a moment in time that many of us for 40-plus years have been waiting for. And that's the moment to centralize our work, to display our partnership with our national partners, NSVRC, Prevent Connect, the National Alliance to End Sexual Violence, and all of you. And our hope is that you hear in our message and our next steps as we move forward that we will be reaching out and creating substantial, significant partnerships with all of our allies and partners who are working each and every day to end sexual violence. And to that end, the policy piece is a part of the larger spectrum of ending sexual violence. And many of you may not be engaged in the policy in your day-to-day life, but our hope is centralizing and working together that we will then be able to share the policy impact that will reinforce and require the strategic plans that we need to actually end sexual violence in one generation. And I say to people, that I agree, that deserves a hand clap, because this is a bold statement we're making. When we initially came up with the term to end sexual violence in one generation, I realized that one of our guiding principles when we began to talk about this was our space and time to be bold. This is our time to say, we go to work every day to end sexual violence, not to just talk about it. And that's what this partnership is requiring. And that's what we're asking each of you to join us in as partners, to look at the ways in which that we can not only continuously affect the legislative and executive branches, which is what the Alliance has spent the last 15 years doing, but how do we do this work administratively? How do we as partners do this work in DC, and how does that then trickle down to the work that you're doing locally? So as a part of our policy initiatives, we'll continue to work with our partners, as Sandra outlined, to look at ways in which we can affect administrative policy in athletic associations. I have a daughter who cheers and dances. Those are places we should be looking at as well, because those are places that we want to impact all of our children, regardless of gender, that we are creating a culture, changing behaviors, and changing lives to end sexual violence in the next generation. And that's something we all should be excited about. I love that you all love the next generation. I think we should just call ourselves the next generation. Because it is true. It's, you know, when I had my daughter, I kept saying, I want to end sexual violence in her lifetime. And I couldn't have foreseen this day that we'd be saying out loud that that is our intent. And we're asking you to join us, and we will be doing so for the first time. The National Alliance to End Sexual Violence will have a physical presence, and we too, like our partners, will be announcing our first position. And I'm excited when we saw our offices. Each of our staff will have an office. We'll have space for interns. For those of you who have interns, we hope that you'll share those interns with us so that we can then begin to do this work together in DC, in our states, and in our local communities. And the things that we'll be doing around policy with a national office is broadening our reach to you. So with the messaging and the work and the communications that NSVRC will be doing, we will be integrating that into our policy work so that we're speaking with one message, one vision, and we're communicating that to you. So regardless of the level that people we work with in policy, they will hear one consistent message. And we do believe that that's one way that we can impact the change to ending sexual violence, is that our message is consistent, our language is consistent, and people can see that all of you in this room and those that are watching our Twitter handles, that will watch the YouTube videos, will also see themselves as a part of this work across all the spectrums and the five-prong approach that Sandra and Delilah talked about. We will be getting more information out to you. We're asking that when we send things to you to inform our policy, that you will be responsive to those things, because in order to end this in one generation, we need your voices. We need to hear from the survivors that you're working with, and we also need to hear the lessons that you're learning doing prevention in your local communities so that it can accurately inform our policy initiatives. And to that end, I want to ask you to join us, and when you start tweeting and you're using the hashtag NSAC 2015, that you're speaking to this first national partnership that's committed to ending sexual violence in one generation. And we hope the challenge that I'm issuing to you is that you say that you too are partner to end sexual violence in one generation. And hopefully you're all as excited and you'll share this message and begin to engage with us as we embark upon our first DC partnership. And thank you.